So this saw college is supposed to be about the best Jonsered, and I see one of the best out there, but I don't see the other one. So we're going to have to discuss that.
Well, I was hoping we'd disagree.
Oh, we're going to disagree. I can tell, because I don't see my 2094.
Well, I don't have one.
Well, there we go. That's now I have to admit the 930 is a little bit better than the 920 and 820s. I don't see the 49.
Well, I can get one.
Does it fit into your definition of the best Jonsered though?
Well, it does, but it's just a smaller version of this.
I see.
But I'll get one if you want to have it out here.
No.
We'll give it an honorable mention. What did you say so far?
2094, and I said that this is another one of our of your saw colleges. I said we're going to disagree already because you don't have one of my favorites. That's the 2094.
No, I don't have one. Even is.
Well, the topic, as I understand it, is the best Jonsered.
Well, it's my nomination.
Your nomination.
In my opinion.
Well, that's a valid opinion.
For like the top 5.
Okay, top 5.
Based on the explanation that I'll give. And there's other. I know this is great because people are going to say this one doesn't belong, or where's that one because that's my favorite. You already started. I'll leave it to you. I want to do 5, and you like insist that I bring it. Now we got 6.
Well, the good news about that is there are a lot of good Jonsereds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the nomination for the top 5. I was off base.
Yeah, and here again, at least that's the way I see it. And we'll start chronologically, all right? You'll have to come over here and be in the camera also. Earliest one is a 621, which I thought was one of the first ones where you start to get the feel for, oh, we got some yellow jackets coming out. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
You start to get the feel for, you know, like the configuration of, you know, the modern chainsaw. All right, got the nice vertical cylinder. Reasonably good, at least for its day. It's got some anti-vibe, just about nothing else did back then. The good, the bad, and the ugly. What's not real good? This was kind of a really a half-assed idea for an air filter.
Yeah.
But this is what they used. And to tell you the truth, up until they started doing stuff like this, you know, their Jonsered like air filter sealing, they weren't really all that good at it.
Do they even have sand in Sweden?
Maybe not. Maybe not. This saw was, this is the same 621 that I ran in the Origins video that we did like 2 years ago, I guess.
But like you're saying, you have anti-vibe already.
Yeah.
Vertical cylinder already.
Yeah.
No chain brake yet.
Nope, not yet.
But a lot of the things that you know and love are already on the saws.
So, do you accept or disagree with this one?
I agree with that one because, like you said, that was one of the pioneering saws, especially in that displacement class. From what I can tell, of course, you were probably selling saws when that thing was being sold, and of course, I'm kind of late to the party.
No, I don't really go back that far. Because this thing came out, what? Like the early
70s?
Early 70s, really.
Your grandfather's saw?
Yeah.
But you know something?
It could have been.
A good running one of those still cuts a lot of wood and wouldn't be a bad saw to run, would it?
No, it wouldn't. You know, I think it's interesting as we're talking about this because Jonsered is kind of being phased out, as people know. Of course, I'm wearing a Red Max shirt while we're doing this. Chronologically, what's next is the 70E. This was kind of a high watermark at its time, in my opinion. It came out in '79. I think they took this whole idea of like oil, gas, everything in the crankcase about as far as they could at this. This was kind of a, it's kind of the begin, in my opinion. Again, this is all just opinion, and anybody can disagree if they want to. It really doesn't matter. But
it's an opinion. It's not wrong with opinion.
So it's like this is kind of what like the 70cc class saw that we kind of know today kind of started with this one, in my opinion. This saw still feels kind of contemporary. You've seen me run this a lot. Air filter sealing got a little bit better on this one if you remember to put the O-ring on there. If the O-ring rotted off and then you didn't use it again, you know, you wouldn't get that good sealing. There's a couple different ignitions on these. One is bolted to the cylinder. One is, you know, bolted and housed in this.
Which is the one that has that plastic fan that's unobtainable?
The unobtainable plastic fan. It's the one with the ignition in the side cover.
Okay.
All right, which is not this. This is actually the later one.
Can you retro one ignition to the other?
Well, you got to change this. No, because the one bolts to the cylinder. So you can't do that. Because the boss is, you know, to bolt. Yeah, so that doesn't work.
So you'd have to do the whole top end and the ignition.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we're talking about something old. You can't really get parts for these things. You know, the thing that's a bit weird about this is kind of a fat saw. Part of it's because of the way the ignition's in here, and the other part of it is, you know, despite the fact that, you know, I mean, that's an inboard clutch, and it's still not a narrow, slim saw.
Yeah.
Now this saw gets run a lot, and this is how I got it. You know, and very little wear on this. This is really like nothing. With any of these saws, what you got to look for, if they painted, I don't think you can see any of that. Maybe if you look through the top, they painted the inside of those tanks. And if your paint held up, you got a good tank. If it didn't, once it starts going, you got the white rust going on in there. It really doesn't work too good. So this is my nomination number 2. This saw, I mean, I run this a lot. You know, it doesn't really feel like you're really running an old saw. Like you pick up most saws like a Mac or a Homie from those days, you know you're running an older saw, it feels it. This doesn't feel that bad. It's not real loud. Some of these came with chain brakes. You could get a chain brake on it. It was an option back then. Same thing when Husky first came out with the Sweet-O-Matic. That was an option. You know, nowadays, you know, they don't want you to even let a saw go out of your shop if the chain brake's not functioning properly. I only brought this out because Walt suggested that I do that. This was ran concurrently with the 70s and 49 SP. It's really, there's still so many of these around, and they're still running. And that's what's weird about this. I mean, there's a lot of both of these saws that come in the shop. As far as like old, there's no saw from this era that comes into the shop as frequently as these do because they're still going. You know, if
rugged saws.
Robin up in Maine is watching this, he's got a bunch of these. He's actually got more than I do. But yeah, these saws are still, you know, guys come in with it and they just don't die. You got a buddy up there that still has one. That was one time we went up to the farm and he was running that. So this isn't really, this is a little brother to that. That's a nice little 50cc saw. This one's in unusually good shape. What I get a kick out of is when you get an old saw and you got the original dealer tag on it. You know, really where did it come from and how to get here. This is Allstate Equipment Sales, Honest Engine Service from New Milford, Connecticut. So I mean, I have no idea if those guys are still in business. Now here's one that's gonna cause a little bit of controversy. This is a 670 Champ, and the first thing everybody's going to say is, well, you know, that's really not a Jonsered, you know, that's a Husky. And yeah, kind of, sort of. It's based on the 162, 61, 272 chassis. We won't go into those differences because they've been well covered in other videos. But at its time, I mean, this is such a good chassis. But what was unique about this, and why I included this, was that this saw, unlike all the Husky versions and the 630 John, this saw used the rubber intake boots. Like outboard clutches, inboard clutches, intake boots versus intake blocks. You know, there's a lot of guys that are going to have a strong opinion about this one's good, that one's no good, this one's better because, and that one's better because. You know what, they're all right. Because they're all pointing out the advantages of one A or B. And, you know, same thing with the clutch thing. But what was different about this, you know, you could have a couple things, you could have failures with torn boots, and a lot of guys, you see that with the modern saws today, with the 372s, the 390s, and they say, well, yeah, the boots tear, so the intake block is better. Well, was it? Because the intake block transferred heat. And you could get some like the early 266s, if you ran them enough in hot weather, they would go because you get too much heat transfer. And they tried changing that with the bolts with the plastic sleeves on them. And then of course you have on either side of that intake block, you got a gasket that can fail. So really, which fails more, okay? And as far as, like, not that I'm going to be the referee here, but which design survived? And it's the boot that survived, because it's still being used today by Husky, by Steel, by everybody else. And even the 394, the main change when they went to the 395s, they went from the intake block to the boot. So to a certain extent, this saw was a little bit ahead of its time because it had the boot involved.
How about those like partner inspired 2077s and 2083s? Don't they have a boot?
Yes.
Did they come after this? Or was that the same?
At the same time with this.
But then that was still Jonsered.
Yeah. I'm getting a little out of sequence here. It doesn't really matter. But
well, that one should be.
That should have been the third one, probably.
Yeah.
Well,
But that means that the Champ is higher up on the priority stack, because you kind of jumped over the poor maligned 930, went right to the 670.
Well, the poor maligned 930 is. I'm saving that for last.
Because that's the best one.
Yeah. That's why if I had to pick like the best one. And my logger friend Todd says that the 930 is the best Jonsered ever built. All right, come on over here. This is the one that people are going to get upset about. You're not really that familiar with this chassis, but
I'm afraid I am. That was the one that had like the layer cake cases.
Oh yeah, with this kind of where the seam is down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing on this chassis that's really not that good.
I remember trying to seal one of those up. I think it was the 2054.
Yeah. All right, this is a 2055. All right. So, reason this is getting nominated. This is you're not disagreeing with any of this yet. You're supposed to be telling me that I'm wrong.
With that one, I didn't have a good time building that 2054.
The reason this is in the nomination is a couple of reasons. One,
14,000 RPMs.
Well, yeah, but actually the 2051 is actually higher. We ran that, the beat up one that I got, the W model with the heated grips. We ran that in a video last winter. That thing would spin pretty high. This one's a better overall cylinder. Out of the three, the 2055 is the best. So why is this one in here? It's a quirky saw with a lot of things that, you know, could have been done better than they were. If you look at where this throttle cable is and where it's coming from, I mean, that's a little bit hard to work on. And if you look at the springs and stuff like this, obviously this is when they were making the Jonsereds at the partner factory, and you could tell that the guys whose paychecks used to say partner on them really designed this. But it was unique in a couple of different ways. As far as I'm aware, I know there's no Husqvarna version of this saw, because they had the 242, the 254, and a few other things covering this. Yep, there's your turbo air cleaning system right there. This thing, keep in mind, let's see when this one was built. 95. Husqvarna had some really good saws that, like the 254s, all the 200 series that we think are great, and they are, but they all vibrate a lot. They're still using rubber mounts, and this is the smoothest saw to run in. And I know you don't like vibrations anymore. You complain about getting old.
I am.
So this thing is really, it's really smooth for its time. A couple of different muffler options. This was the later top port. So that's why this is here. And the thing is, it's the last saw that was introduced by Jonsered that was Jonsered only. And I know obviously the partner guys, the partner influence is obvious there, and I know, but there wasn't a partner version of this either. So there was 3 saws in this chassis, the 51, the 54, and the 55. There's 2 54s. There was an EPA version with a small cylinder. It's a pig. It really is. The 51 is the one that really revs up high. I think it was 14.5.
Yeah.
All right, 14.7, something like that. This is as the all-around one, this is the better one. It's a good closed port cylinder. So I think this chassis is really, like I said, it's the last of the Jonsered only designs to come out. Everything since then, and there's some good stuff there, but you know, most of them were, you know, just Huskies with red stuff on them. Like this stuff, you know, just now to where the end of them. That's a weird spot for the air cleaner. It kind of stays with the top cover, and you got this horn that drops in there. These things actually seal pretty good though. And one of the reasons that they did is because like this material that the air filter is sealing, that's a soft material. And that's one of the things, like even on the 562s that they're, you know, they're looking to change there, is that, you know, part of your ability to seal is, you know, the type of material. If it's real hard and you got up against the hard plastic air filter, you can only seal it so good. So,
what about ignitions in those?
Yeah, it's got its unique ignition. There's not too many parts on this saw and this chassis that are shared with anything. Which makes now for the project guy, again, you know, what we've been repeating all day here is you got to have a complete saw if you're going to get one of these things. Because finding parts for these, let's get a couple dead ones. There's also some early and late, and if I had the 2051 I heard you'd see it, but the, you know, there's an early starter and a later starter, and they don't, you know, they have to have, the top covers have to be different also. They have to mate with each other. You can't mix one top cover with the other starter. What do you think of that one?
Well, my opinion of those is they scream, the ones that you brought. But I remember fighting with one of those damn things and trying to get it to seal up, and it has kind of like a clamshell on steroids kind of a design.
It's like a magnesium clamshell.
Well,
it's... Wasn't the smartest thing? You see the seam here and here?
Yeah.
Now this thing had a hole in it. I had to JB that. But otherwise, this saw, these are nice saws to run. I don't think there's any video time in this one. You know, Jimmy has one of these.
Yeah.
He runs the heck out of it, and I know he's had it up your place a lot. I don't know if there's any video of that, but he runs his quite a bit.
Well, we should probably put that out more, because that's what, 55 cc's?
I think 53 maybe.
In that range.
Yeah.
So is that design part of the inspiration for the 350s with the stacked?
They might have got some ideas like that. This would really be more comparable to like to the 254s, which we're selling at the same time. And it'll run with a 254. You know what this is? Now you're going to go looking for one. Is that this is a 254 without vibration.
See, what it is here is Bob is a salesman.
No, I can't. I'm not selling this. You can't have it.
Well, I understand that, but I can go hunt for him.
Yeah.
You kind of send me on the mission, we'll find some saws.
This always comes down to favorite chassis, me and Walt.
It is. See, I agree with this one.
Yeah. Yeah. There ain't going to be any disagreements with this. This is a 930 Super. There's a 920. There's some differences in the cylinder, and you know, we're trying to do too much stuff today, and I don't have all the cylinders laid out, but that's been covered in the other 900 series video, so it's kind of a repeat there.
There's only one reason I don't like that saw. There's one.
Why?
Because that runs my 920.
Yeah, this one's a strong running saw. There's a bunch of different mufflers here. In some areas, this saw was super popular with the pro guys, so parts for these new are very difficult to find, but parts for these, you know, just out there's a lot of dead saws, because most of these saws got used and used up.
Well, if you're interested in these, what you got to do is just kind of what Bob and I've done, and that's just grab every dead chassis you can. And I still grab when I can.
Yep.
And things like those anti-vibe parts in the handle and stuff like that are just gold.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a certain rule, a couple rules that Walt and I have come up with, and one of them is, you know, every dead saw has something useful on it.
Now that muffler, that's the one, that's like we were saying, that's got the one hole down here. I've got one that looks like it has a square right there.
Yeah.
Which one runs better?
This one. When you take the thing out.
Yeah.
But as far as anything else, you got to be cutting it and opening up. Then you got the little square box here, which is,
yeah,
some of the 930 mufflers, the 900 series mufflers look like that. They have that opening.
Yeah.
All right. Some of them. Maybe bring this down.
See?
Some of them have this style exhaust here.
Let me get the camera a little closer. So even though these saws are different models, the style muffler. Yeah,
they had a kind of a muffler philosophy that they used, and these were really the three that they were using All of these saws, well, these saws came with these two mufflers. They never had it on like on that. The 2055 has this type of an outlet on some of them, but that's the best one. This one's easy to change. That one's harder to change. You can go in there and drill down and open it up pretty easy, which I did to another.
Is that gutted, those? They come open inside, or they?
Nah, they got right in here. There's a box. Your exhaust port comes out, and there's a box with a bunch of smaller holes in it. Yeah. And then it goes to that exhaust. But here again, like we said a couple of videos ago, I'm starting to like. There's sometimes that I just don't want a modded muffler. I want a quiet muffler.
So anyway. I've got these covers that don't have chain brakes too in the box, new in the box.
Yeah, it's tough to get some of that stuff. So anyway, so we agree that, and that's kind of like out of all of them, the 900 series. Now, you know, we're getting older, and the amount of time that we want to run bigger saws isn't there. There's occasions where you really need. I got one of these with a 28-inch bar, and I've used that when I got to get into something big.
You know what it is, Bob? These are fun to run if you like Jonsereds.
Yep.
And that's why you run it, not because you're going to go try to compete with a modern saw. You know? Yep. It's fun getting those things to go, and they run quite strong for what they are.
And with the exception of these two saws, this is kind of like a strong partner influence. This is obviously a Husky thing. All these saws, you know, Jonsered back then, you know, part of their compression theory was they all ran domed pistons.
Well, this has got partner influence.
Yeah, it does, because the 910, look at that nice new air filter there. What happens when you buy dealers out? You know, you get good stuff, and it's like, well, we can sell some of it, but
it goes into the stash.
Some of it goes to the collection. If you want to do real quick, we were talking about
is that the same
on the 288 thing?
Yeah, is that the same as the 288?
Well, yeah, you can interchange that with the 288. It's got the two. Matter of fact, you can interchange both of them.
That's good to know.
Yeah, you can interchange. So if you have a 920 or a 930 and you got a dead ignition, you can use 288 stuff in there. All right. Another thing you look at here is what we were talking about in the 288. And this is an example of I don't know if I can do it on this one, but if you can see now, that one doesn't have enough play in it. But sometimes, you know, that play will activate that throttle.
Well, you can see it moving the operating rod.
Yeah, it's not really actually hitting the throttle plate, but sometimes those throttle links can do that. But so now the thing is, like, which outcuts what? Jonsered and Husky they weren't quite as
friendly.
Much, yeah, they weren't quite as much in the families. They was like, you know, Electrolux owned them both. So basically, the 920 had the same. These use intake boots also, by the way. All the 900s, they don't use a block. You can still get for the 920, the 930. You can. There's one we found. You can still get a replacement piston. You can clean up the cylinder. It's a VEC piston. You can get these from Sal over at Northwood Saw, which is really kind of close to me, really. Just a slight dome on that. You know what? Aftermarket piston. It's not that bad. I'd say a 920 and a 288 are pretty much a tie. But if you got the second generation 930 with that different cylinder where it's cutting open to the transfers, the 930 will be a little bit stronger.
Which is good to know.
Yeah. Good you pointed out that thing with the ignition. I would have forgot that. So there's my nominations for the top 5. What do you think should have been? I know you like that 2094, but what do you think is? Do you think any of these things don't qualify, or they do?
I don't know if I go along with the 2055.
Yeah, I knew you wouldn't.
So
I knew you wouldn't.
That would be the one that I would disagree with. And if you go and say the 49 is the same as a 70, well then that means I'm down to 4. But if you put the 49 in there, there's my 5. I happen to like, and this is going to go against your grain, I happen to like some of the Husqvarna inspired. Well, we're getting bombed by acorns.
Nuts. Hickory nuts.
I happen to like...
Cook on the grill over there, it's underneath those 2 hickory trees. It's almost a hard hat area.
Yeah. But I happen to like the 2171, that series. And I like the last iterations of the Jonsereds where they had the low tops. And you know.
Well, I agree with, yeah, the 2171 was like, could have been here. The only reason I didn't do it is that,
It's a Husqvarna.
well, it's not different enough.
Yeah.
It's not different enough from a Husky.
Well, I'm not that much of a purist.
Yeah, I know. So it's like, anyway, so that would be my next one, really. If it wasn't for that little distinction, it would be that. You know, the rest of the newer stuff, the 2083s and 2077s, you know, they were different, they were unique.
I'm not a fan of them because everyone I've stuck together has had an air leak. Well, and it's hard to get the air leaks out of them.
Really small air filter. I think they were super heavy for what you were getting displacement-wise. So I'm not a big fan of them. I wouldn't have nominated those. I know, you know, somebody probably loves them. That's fine. If it's working, it's cutting wood. You know, nobody's really wrong with this stuff.
Yeah, it's an opinion.
We all have different things. It's like, you know, like you can pick different trucks for different colors. You know, we got the same truck in different colors. Really, not that different. But,
yeah.
But you know, it's like to each his own. You know, so this is just like what I think, and you know, not to shoot down anything else.
So I guess to answer your question, the 820 through 930 line would be my favorite.
Yep, same. I agree with that. Are we
going
to rank them?
I'm going to rank mine.
All right.
Because I'm going to do my top 5. I'm starting out with the 820 and 930, that series. We're not going to do it by specific saw, but by class of saw.
By family.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's my top. That's my favorite.
Okay, I'm with you there.
The second on my list would be the 620, only because of its place in history, and being ahead of its time and being sort of a trend setter. Yeah, I would put that as my number 2.
My number 2 would be the 70E.
My number 3 would be the 2094 because it's such a beast, and I just had a lot of fun with mine. So there's really no practical or logical reason why it would fit in the top 5 from the sales perspective, but the thing is a beast, and I've just had a lot of fun with that one. When my shoulders begin to come apart, I'll have less fun. Number 4 on my list would be that 70 series. I really do think that they are also trendsetters, but also, like what Bob was saying, they were built like a tank, and not necessarily from a weight perspective, but they're pretty heavy too. But in my area, that is the saw that people identify with Jonsered, and they kind of set a trend for quality and for durability that I don't think has been beat by anything save a Homelight XL12 or something like that. The only difference being that's a pro level saw. And then on my last, I'd go ahead with the 670 series. And I just like those. But see, that again is in my mind similar to the 2171, where there's a lot of Husqvarna inspiration, obviously.
Well, I agree with that. There's more similarities than differences, so I'm okay with that. Yeah.
So that's my top 5.
Yeah. And you're saying this 2171 is one of them?
Yeah.
Well, as far as like, I think this is from a historical standpoint.
Yeah.
But if I was going to say, okay, what am I actually going to use? All right. So you got like, there's 2 different ways to look at this. But as far as what I would like to use, you know, I can run these. These feel a little more dated to me than like a 70E. I can run a 70E all the time, and it just feels like any other saw. So the 2171 chassis, I would definitely roll in here as far as and of course you see me use them all the time. So that would be what I would add that.
First choice, yeah.
Yeah.
And we run these until we get tired of them, and it's not we get tired of them, they just beat the heck out of the old bod. So, I mean, I'll pick that one up and run it until joints hurt. And I enjoy those. And then it would be back to one of the other ones, my 2172 or something along those lines.
Yeah, 71s, I got a couple of them. My 2163 that I got from Eric Olson up in Vermont. That gets a lot of use because it's my only heated grip saw on the whole 372 2171 chassis family. So that's kind of a special saw for me.
So we already did the what's happening to Jonsereds. We don't have to visit that.
Yeah, we don't get into that. We did that.
So we're going to celebrate the successes and the good side, and just kind of remember them from that perspective versus what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, these saws are all still going to get used.
I have another one to throw in there, and that's the 2260.
Right.
So that's got to float up there somewhere. If I was to grab the saws, and if you want to make a derivative of the conversation, saying what would you grab first to go work with, I'd probably still start out with one of those until I couldn't hang on to it anymore. And then it's either going to be a 2171 derivative or a 2260. But by the end of the day, it's going to be a 2260.
Well, you said something to me a few years back, and it's like, you know, we're talking about, you know, this saw, that saw, what would you pick? And you asked me, you told me, you said, you don't know what you're going to run into. Usually we do. If you got big stuff, and you're really cutting big stuff, then this is what I would grab. If you're not sure what you would run into, a 2171 with a 22-inch bar would be something that I could run a lot longer than I can hang on to this thing.
Yeah.
You know, so that would be kind of where you would go. These as, you know, first of all, we're not really talking about, this is getting more involved than I expected it would be, but it's interesting. We're not talking about what we would do. We've got some weather coming in here, by the way. Look at the leaves coming down back there. It's like behind you to the left.